Stop everything and confront this dangerous paradox. You have been told your entire life that humility is a virtue, that modesty is a sign of good character. But here is the critical strategic truth. Your passive humility is a psychological weakness that is actively shrinking your life and diminishing your power. You are shrinking your presence, hiding your competence, and subtly apologizing for taking up space in a world that only respects those who are visible. Why does society relentlessly demand modesty? Because the humble man is manageable, predictable, and poses no threat to the established hierarchy. Imagine walking into a room where you possess the most competence, yet you remain silent, waiting for permission to speak, worried about how your success will land on others. That hesitation, that constant concern for external comfort, is the fatal flaw that keeps you kneeling. The vulnerability of shrinking is the cost of false humility. It is a signal that your worth is negotiable and depends entirely on the approval of others. Machiavelli, the master of human behavior, dissected this precise psychological dynamic and offered a chilling insight into why true power avoids this trap. Men shrink less from offending one who makes them fear than one who makes them hope. Think about the depth of that statement. When you operate from conventional humility, you make people hope you won't challenge them. You give them the hope that they can overlook you. This hope invites slight disrespect and disregard. But when you project an unapologetic, confident presence, a strategic form of arrogance, you compel a necessary level of fear and respect. You force them to hesitate before crossing you. Your strategic mandate today is to reject this crippling modesty. This is not a call to become crude or aggressive. This is a demand to master strategic projection. The conscious act of ensuring your external image reflects the undeniable power and competence you hold internally. Your success is not an inconvenience for others. Your failure to project that success is a strategic failure for yourself. We are going to teach you how to replace the habit of shrinking with the power of decisive presence. Are you ready to shed the weakness of false humility and unleash the necessary power of projection? Now, drop this affirmation in the comments and solidify your commitment. I choose my path. My life is my command. Law 1, the law of visible value. The first fundamental law of seizing your throne requires you to shatter the destructive myth of modesty. Conventional humility is not a virtue in the pursuit of power. It is a psychological retreat. Humility actively hides your competence, and in a ruthlessly competitive world, if your value is not visible, it does not exist. Most men operate under the naive belief that their excellent work alone should speak for itself. They assume that their quality, their effort, and their talent will naturally be recognized and rewarded. This is a fatal strategic error. The truth is, people are busy, distracted, and inherently biased. They do not have the time, energy, or critical interest to excavate the truth of your worth. They respond immediately to the signals you consciously or unconsciously broadcast. Your body language and verbal habits are constantly telling the world whether you are valuable or disposable. Think about the habits of false humility. Shrinking your posture, using vague or apologetic language, minimizing your achievements, and waiting for external validation. Every time you engage in these behaviors, you are sending a clear message. My worth is negotiable. I am unsure if I deserve this space. This immediately invites disrespect, low offers, and casual dismissal. You are allowing others to set the ceiling on your ambition and influence. This structural reality was defined centuries ago by Machiavelli. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. This is your mandate. Since people are governed by appearance, you have a strategic obligation to control the story they believe about your capability. Your physical presence, your confidence, and the decisive nature of your communication are what people see first. Your deep competence is what they only experience later. If the initial visual verdict is negative, they will rarely take the time to discover the underlying reality. Strategic projection in practice. Strategic self-promotion is not boastfulness. It is the necessary act of securing your worth through visibility. You must replace the destructive habits of shrinking with the powerful discipline of projection. Own the space. Replace shrinking posture with deliberate, calm stillness. When you enter a room, move with intentionality. Stand and sit like a monument, not like a fleeting shadow. This projects mental stillness and inherent confidence. Claim credit decisively. Never let a successful outcome be attributed to the team or luck alone. While recognizing others is vital for building alliances, you must strategically claim your specific role and contribution with clarity and authority. Avoid apologetic language like, "Oh, it was nothing, anyone could have done it." Replace it with, "I designed the core framework that made that possible." Verbal authority. Eliminate minimizing phrases like "just," "maybe," or "I think." Speak in declarative sentences. Your words are facts, not tentative suggestions. Imagine a scenario in a critical stakeholder meeting where you are presenting a successful quarter. The naive, humble approach. The individual presents the data but minimizes their role, saying, "We got lucky with the market, and the team pulled it together. My part was small." The result: the audience sees a low-value asset. Management remembers the team, not the leader. Opportunity for promotion is missed. The strategic projection approach. The individual presents the data and states, "This success confirms the resource allocation strategy I implemented in Q1. My team executed the plan flawlessly, and I forecast a 20% growth by maintaining this precise framework." The result: the audience sees a leader, a strategist, and the owner of the outcome. Their worth is immediately cemented as a high-value, non-negotiable asset. Your job is to ensure that the perception of your power, what the world sees, is aligned with the reality of your competence. You secure your worth not by being meekly agreeable, but by being visibly and unapologetically valuable. Law 2. The non-negotiable ask. The second law of seizing your throne requires you to eradicate a deeply ingrained habit that is actively sabotaging your trajectory: apologetic ambition. The majority are conditioned to approach life's greatest rewards with a whispered maybe or a hesitant "if you don't mind." Every time you preface a demand with "sorry," "just," or a barrage of nervous explanations, you are not being polite. You are performing low self-worth. You are strategically signaling to the world that your ambition is negotiable, easily dismissed, and contingent upon external approval. This habit kills acquisition. Machiavelli defined the core human driver that should legitimize your demands. The desire to acquire is a natural and ordinary thing. If the desire to acquire, to seek more resources, more success, and more control is natural to human existence, then why are you apologizing for it? Why are you approaching life's essential exchanges like a supplicant begging for scraps? Your desire for advancement is not a flaw. It is the engine of power, and it must be asserted as an unshakable right, not a hesitant request. The apologetic approach invites immediate devaluation. When you ask tentatively, your adversary automatically discounts your request because they sense you don't fully believe you deserve it. This creates a psychological imbalance where the other party instantly holds all the leverage. You become responsible for mitigating their potential discomfort with your request, wasting energy you should be directing toward execution. This is the behavioral shift required. You must replace the language of apology with the language of necessity. When making a demand, it must be framed not as a personal favor, but as the logical, necessary next step toward a mutually beneficial outcome. Your ask must communicate the absolute certainty of an individual who knows precisely what they are worth and is prepared to enforce that value. Consider a high-stakes scenario where the difference between a tentative request and a non-negotiable demand is clearly measurable, a critical salary negotiation for a new role. The apologetic approach. The candidate starts, "I know you have budget constraints and I don't want to overstep, but I was just hoping we could look at a salary around X dollars, if that's possible." The result? The employer instantly counters with a lower number, sensing the candidate's fear of rejection and willingness to compromise. The candidate loses leverage by apologizing for their value. The non-negotiable demand. The candidate states calmly, "Based on the market analysis and the unique value I deliver, my compensation requirement for this role is Y dollars, non-negotiable. My commitment is absolute at this level." The result? The employer takes the demand seriously. The framing shifts from, "Can you please give me this?" to, "This is the cost of securing my commitment." The candidate enforces their reality. The non-negotiable ask requires you to master the ability to walk away. When you ask for high stakes, you must be visibly prepared for the answer to be no. That readiness to retreat, the contingency mandate, is the final piece of psychological armor that confirms the sincerity of your demand. When your counterpart senses that your self-respect is greater than your need for the outcome, they are compelled to meet your terms. Your self-respect demands that you ask for high stakes. Your internal commitment must be so profound that you never again apologize for pursuing the rewards commensurate with your effort. Apology kills acquisition. Unwavering assertion creates power. Apologize for nothing that is strategically aligned with your growth. Law 3. Arrogance as armor. The third law of securing your throne demands that you deliberately cultivate strategic arrogance. This is the conscious, necessary use of unapologetic self-projection to instantly define your social boundaries. Most people believe arrogance is simply a character flaw. The strategist understands it is essential psychological armor. Your goal is to utilize this strategic projection as a filter that instantly repels low-value people, energy drains, and time wasters, while simultaneously attracting strength, competence, and high-value allies. You must realize that conventional niceness and excessive approachability are not virtues in this context. They are psychological invitations for exploitation. The humble man, the excessively agreeable man, automatically attracts takers, emotional dependence, and individuals who thrive on perceived vulnerability. These people are drawn to you because they sense a low cost of entry. They know they can waste your time, seek endless emotional support, and violate your boundaries without any discernible consequence. Your vulnerability becomes the fuel for their self-interest. To eliminate this draining interference, you must deploy a protective barrier of projection. Machiavelli defined the necessary choice for leadership survival, a principle that applies perfectly to your social architecture. It is better to be feared than loved. Feared than loved if you cannot be both in the context of your personal power. Fear is not violent intimidation. It is unquestioning respect for your competence and boundaries. Love is the shallow desire for your compliance and comfort. When you project strategic arrogance, you are compelling respect and signaling that interference with your mission will carry a cost. Strategic arrogance is the discipline of signaling non-negotiability. Insecure or exploitative people require someone they perceive as slightly weak or easy to manipulate to feel safe. When you meet them with an unyielding, unapologetic presence, a refusal to apologize for your success or explain your high standards, they are instantly discomforted. They recognize the high energy cost required to penetrate your defenses and instinctively retreat, seeking easier targets. Your projection acts as a biological repellent to psychological parasites. High-value, competent individuals do not seek partners who are needy or apologetic. They are drawn to those who project certainty, effectiveness, and decisiveness. Your visible confidence serves as a beacon, signaling, "This person is capable, they know their worth, and they will reliably execute." The strong want reliable outcomes, and your projected strength is the best guarantee of that. Consider a common social scenario where a high-value group is discussing a complex investment opportunity, and someone attempts to interrupt or derail the conversation with irrelevant information. The apologetic man attempts to interject with a useful point, but uses tentative language. He is immediately ignored, his point is lost, and his social standing diminishes. The strategist waits for a pause, maintains steady eye contact, and then projects an opinion with absolute finality. The analysis is sound, but we are currently optimizing for the wrong variable. The necessary move is X, and the timeline is non-negotiable. He speaks with the assumption of authority. The content of his statement is less important than the unquestioning conviction behind it, forcing the group to pause and process his command. To implement this filter, you must eliminate the behavior of unnecessary justification. Hold a firm, confident posture. Use your voice as a tool of statement, not question. Projecting this armor secures your environment, ensuring the only people who remain in your orbit are those who can genuinely contribute to your ascent. Law 4. Mastering the public silence. The fourth law in seizing your throne is the strategic mastery of public silence. You must learn to distinguish between shy, passive silence and powerful, observing silence, the latter being the very essence of gravitas. The majority of men mistake quietness for social anxiety, allowing their silence to become a psychological liability that broadcasts fear and insecurity. But for the strategist, silence is not merely the absence of sound. It is an active, aggressive form of intelligence gathering and power projection. Understand how passive silence betrays you. The shy or passive man is quiet because he lacks the confidence to speak. This internal fear manifests externally: darting eyes, nervous fidgeting, a slumped posture, and a palpable sense of seeking permission. When others read these non-verbal cues, they instantly categorize you as non-threatening, unintelligent, and lacking conviction. Your perceived inability to contribute verbally invites others to speak over you, disregard your presence, and assume your silence signals your low value. Your passivity becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of irrelevance. True gravitas is projected when silence is wielded as a conscious strategic choice. This requires internalizing the role of the unmoved observer. When you remain silent, you are not anxious. You are collecting data, assessing threats, and analyzing patterns. Your stillness is an active form of pressure. You force your environment to reveal their hands, their weaknesses, and their true motivations, while you remain structurally unreadable. Machiavelli gave the ruler the absolute justification for this posture. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. For the modern strategist, this means your strategic silence allows you to study the men around you, your rivals, your allies, and your subordinates. You become the ruler, assessing the quality of his domain. You are judging the room, not being judged by it. Consider a high-pressure team debate where a major decision needs to be made. The noisy participant talks frantically, interrupting, offering 5 suggestions in 2 minutes, fidgeting with his pen and sweating slightly. His silence only occurs when he is trying to formulate his next nervous thought. The result: he is perceived as erratic and desperate. His words lose all impact because they are diluted by panic. The master of gravitas speaks only once, after absorbing the entire debate. He maintains a steady, deliberate posture, hands resting still on the table. His gaze is commanding. The result? His single, measured statement holds the weight of a final verdict. He is perceived as the anchor of the room, the source of clarity, and the individual who, though quiet, possesses the greatest control. To successfully project this powerful strategic silence, you must master the physical mechanics of stillness. Fixed gaze, eliminate darting eyes, hold a steady gaze that communicates deep thought, not fear or a need for approval. Physical anchor, forbid fidgeting. Rest your hands and feet in a controlled, still position. Every unnecessary movement betrays your internal restlessness. Vocal reserve. Speak only when you have assessed the situation completely, and your words will maximize influence. When you are silent, the room must feel that the silence is intentional and strategic, not accidental. By mastering this deliberate silence, you transform yourself from a passive participant into the fixed point of control. You let the environment provide the noise and the chaos. You provide the clarity, the structure, and the final, decisive command. Your silence is the source of your authority. Law 5. The discomfort principle. The fifth law in seizing your throne reveals a profound truth that most people refuse to accept. Your authentic growth requires you to make your environment psychologically uncomfortable. You cannot ascend to greatness while meticulously catering to the comfort zones and stagnant expectations of those around you. True, unyielding progress is inherently a disruptive force, and disruption creates psychological resistance. Most individuals are structurally programmed for stasis. They prioritize predictability over progress, and they use their environment, their friends, colleagues, and family to reinforce their own current limitations. If you dare to change, to grow exponentially, or to operate with a new level of ambition, you become a living, breathing contradiction to their comfortable status quo. This is why you must be willing to make them uncomfortable. That discomfort is the psychological boundary you are forging between your ascent and their stagnation. Machiavelli gave us the perfect analysis for this resistance. Men willingly believe what they wish to believe. Think about the implications of this statement. People wish to believe that high success is only for the gifted, that hard work alone isn't enough, and that radical change is impossible. These are all comfortable lies because they exempt the observer from having to do any difficult work. When you project immense, unapologetic success, you shatter their comfortable narrative. Your ambition forces them to confront a terrifying reality. If he can do it, maybe I can too. This self-inflicted pressure is why they react with resistance, criticism, and anger. They are fighting to save their comfortable lie. Your projected confidence and non-apologetic success must act as a psychological filter. This filter instantly repels individuals who thrive on mediocrity, insecurity, or a low cost of entry. Consider your work environment. You begin operating with a new level of discipline, arriving early, maintaining cold focus, and demanding high quality from shared projects. Your lazy or low-performing colleagues instantly become uncomfortable. Your new standard makes their lack of discipline glaringly obvious. Your refusal to accept their excuses forces them to either match your effort or retreat and label you too intense. You must accept that genuine growth is often a process of disappointment for people who never truly knew your potential. The discomfort principle is a mandate to disappoint them now, in the short term, to honor your true sovereign self in the long term. You must prioritize the structural integrity of your future over the temporary emotional ease of others. This is a crucial, cold choice. Your comfort is subordinate to your growth. Their comfort is subordinate to your ambition. By being unapologetically excellent and visibly certain of your path, You create an environment where the resistance eventually subsides, and those who remain are the ones who genuinely respect your power and wish to align with your ascent. Law 6. Conquer the inner apology. The sixth non-negotiable law in seizing your throne demands the absolute conquest of the inner apology. This is the instinctive, self-sabotaging reflex to justify, explain, or desperately seek external validation for your choices, your boundaries, and your very existence. This reflex is not politeness. It is a profound act of servitude where you willingly surrender your self-sovereignty before the confrontation even begins. The core psychological root of the inner apology is fear. The fear of conflict, the fear of disapproval, and the paralyzing fear of standing completely alone in your conviction. This fear manifests as leakage, unnecessary explanations, nervous laughter, shrinking posture, and the ubiquitous damaging use of phrases like I'm sorry, but, or I hope you don't mind. Every time you deploy this language, you are not merely filling space. You are actively broadcasting your low self-worth, inviting devaluation and signaling that your position is open for negotiation. Machiavelli defined the stark reality of this choice centuries ago. He who is not master of himself will always be a servant of others. The inner apology is the language of the servant. It is the verbal acknowledgement that you require an external authority figure to validate your decision, your presence, or your boundary. The strategic consequence is irreversible. When you seek external permission for your own life, you are choosing the role of the servant, and the world will ruthlessly treat you as such. Your mandate is to replace the language of apology with the finality of necessity. A necessary decision, a boundary, a change in plans, or a withdrawal requires no justification beyond its existence. The explanation itself is the weakness, as it gives your adversary a script to follow for arguing you out of your position. Imagine a friend makes an unreasonable, resource-draining request of your time. The over-explaining failure. The individual says, "Oh, I'm really sorry, but I just can't because my week is completely crazy and I have that thing I told you about, and my dog is sick." Result: the friend instantly has 3 points to attack, but you can move your thing. The dog is fine and your week is always crazy. You lose the boundary. The master's command: you pause, hold composure, and state calmly, "I appreciate you asking. My capacity is currently closed. That is my decision." No apology, no explanation. The focus remains on your finality, forcing the friend to accept the reality of your schedule. Conquering the inner apology requires discipline in 3 domains. Verbal discipline. Eliminate the words sorry and just when setting a boundary or making a choice that affects no one but yourself. Replace them with declarative statements. "This is what I require. That is my final decision," or "I am focused elsewhere." Behavioral discipline. When you deliver a non-negotiable decision, do not linger. Move decisively toward the next agenda item. Lingering invites negotiation and signals that your stance is fragile. Postural discipline. Ensure your physical presence is aligned with your words. Do not shrink. Maintain solid posture and steady eye contact. Your body must project the conviction that your choice is final, thereby silencing the internal voice that demands external reassurance. By eliminating the instinct to justify your existence, you take absolute sovereign command of your inner state. You are no longer begging for acceptance. You are simply stating a fact of your reality. Master your communication, and you secure the throne of self-mastery. Law 7. The strategic cost of kindness. The final law in seizing your throne demands a ruthless strategic realization about your personal resources. Unconditional kindness is not a virtue in the competitive arena. It is a strategic drain that creates structural dependency and eventual resentment. Most men fail to calculate the true cost of their generosity, mistaking unlimited access for loyalty. They are tragically wrong. You must master the discipline of selective generosity and treat your resources, your time, energy, attention, and financial assistance as scarce and highly valuable assets. The moment your help becomes predictable, it loses its psychological value. This phenomenon is governed by hedonic adaptation. Human beings rapidly adjust their expectations to a new baseline. When you grant a favor once, the recipient is grateful. When you grant it 10 times, they stop viewing it as a gift and start viewing it as an entitlement. The moment you finally say no, they do not remember the 10 times you affirmed them. They only remember the single time you denied them, instantly casting you as the antagonist. Your continuous warmth has not built loyalty. It has engineered a dependency that breeds resentment. Machiavelli prescribed the exact counter-strategy to this human flaw. Benefits ought to be conferred gradually, and in that way they will taste better. This means your strategic favors must be rare, deliberate, and spaced out. By rationing your generosity, you maximize its perceived value, ensuring that each instance of aid lands with impact, cementing genuine gratitude rather than predictable expectation. To ensure your kindness serves your power and not your eventual ruin, every request for your resources must pass through 3 rigorous filters. You must ask, does saying yes to this request move me closer to my primary, sovereign objective, or does it actively detract from my finite resources? Most people say yes out of guilt. The strategist says yes only when the alignment is clear. Never rely on blind trust. Assess the true capacity and proven willingness of the individual to return genuine value. If they are chronic takers, they must be purged from your resource allocation pool. Your resources are for allies and high-potential investments, not for sustaining psychological parasites. You must ensure your resources are viewed as rare. When you do grant a favor, execute it decisively and completely, but make it clear that this resource is not perpetually available. The goal is to make the individual understand that the effort required to secure your help is significant. Consider a scenario where a colleague constantly asks you to review their work, draining your evening hours. The naive individual says, "Yes, absolutely, send it over tonight," every time. The result: the colleague stops planning effectively, relies on your free labor, and sees you as a non-essential resource whose time is disposable. The strategic individual says, "I appreciate you asking. My focus is closed for the evening, but if you send it by Wednesday morning, I can dedicate 30 minutes to it before I begin my own priorities." The result: you introduce friction, forcing the colleague to manage their time better and establishing your time as a rare commodity that must be submitted on your terms. By implementing these strategic filters, you transform your kindness from a vulnerability into a tool for building structural loyalty and reinforcing your value. You preserve your time and energy, which are the fundamental currencies required to build your throne, and you ensure that the help you dispense creates allies, not resentful dependents. The new code of presence, the journey to structural power, is now complete. You have successfully dismantled the debilitating myth of conventional humility and replaced it with the 7 iron laws of strategic self-projection. This is the synthesis of your new identity. You have learned that the law of visible value demands you seize the stage and claim your worth, forbidding your competence from remaining hidden. You have mastered the non-negotiable ask, understanding that true self-respect is communicated through assertion, not apology. You are now armed with arrogance as armor, using unapologetic confidence to strategically filter out low-value individuals and attract competence. Your internal compass has been recalibrated by mastering the public silence, transforming your quietness from passive fear into active, observing power. You have embraced the discomfort principle, recognizing that necessary growth requires you to make your stagnant environment psychologically uncomfortable. You have surgically conquered the inner apology, eliminating the self-sabotaging instinct to justify your decisions to those who lack the right to question them. And finally, you have internalized the strategic cost of kindness, making your generosity a scarce, high-value asset rather than a universal liability. The result of internalizing this new code is profound. You cease to be a person who merely reacts and transforms into an individual who dictates the psychological terms of engagement. Your posture is no longer a question. It is an irrevocable statement. Your voice is no longer a tentative suggestion. It is a final command. You have built a structural defense around your ambition. Machiavelli's ultimate strategic counsel defined this trade-off. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. This is not a choice for cruelty. It is a mandate for effectiveness. Your previous pursuit of universal likability secured nothing but compromise and low self-worth. Your new commitment to unapologetic presence secures respect, influence, and the structural integrity necessary for your success. You must be willing to disappoint those who need you to remain small in order to honor the powerful person you are destined to become. This knowledge is worthless unless it is immediately converted into applied behavior. Your final challenge is to commit to this new identity without flinching. Your environment will test you instantly. They will push back against your new boundaries. Your old, weak self will whisper doubts. You must silence that inner voice and choose the strategic action. Do not retreat from the resistance you encounter. That resistance is merely proof that the code is working. Let your unshakable presence become your signature. Let your refusal to apologize become your power. Let your strategic silence become your most potent tool. The time for shrinking is over. Make your commitment binding. Drop this final, irreversible affirmation into the comments. My presence is my command. I am unapologetic power.